George Gankas didn't reinvent the golf swing, he just gave Hogan's principles an Instagram filter. What's up, LGA? It took me about 5 hours to do this video, so if you wouldn't mind, hit me a quick like, I'd really appreciate it. But let's get going. Today we're breaking down the George Gankas golf swing, not just to see what he teaches, but to put it to the test. I'm going to analyze George himself, then take a look at one of his students to see how that instruction actually shows up in motion. But we're not stopping there. I'm also going to show you 6 legendary PGA Tour players dating all the way back to the 1950s who were doing parts of what Gankas teaches long before Instagram or pressure plates existed. If you do enjoy deep cause and effect analysis like this, do me a favor, hit that like, share, subscribe button and drop a comment on who you'd like me to break down next. And if you want to support the channel and help keep this kind of free education going, consider becoming a channel membership. It helps me continue to bring you videos like this. Let's get into it. So without overcomplicating the George Gankas step-by-step, even though there's no published step-by-step listing, I'll break it down into what's spot on, what is taught but can also be varied, and what is often misinterpreted. So what is taught based on his teaching is hand depth is established early in the backswing, the trail leg extension to help the hip turn, the shallowing through external trail arm rotation, ground force used to rotate, high rotation rates at impact, and at impact you're looking for the handle forward and the trail elbow in front of the rib cage. Now what is taught but can often vary or has changed over time is the rounded lumbar setup. Earlier George Gankas emphasized this hard, although recently he's relaxed this depending on your body type, which is good news. Another thing that can be varied is your club being slightly laid off at the top. It's not a universal goal, more of a byproduct of shallowing. The spine extension and finish, he's okay with early extension as long as rotation continues, and the low handle at setup. This all will depend on the player. Taller guys typically set them higher. Now what is often misinterpreted about his theory is people think Gankas teaches perfect textbook lines, but he doesn't. He's actually big on matchups. For example, if you get hand depth early, you can shallow later, or if you externally rotate, you don't need as much wrist hinge, etc. So he is not so stuck on positions, unlike some previous instructors that I've analyzed, which is a good thing because he is definitely open to changing positions and sequences alike to suit the user of that golf club. And just as usual, I'm going to now mention the positives and negatives for any golfer that attempts the George Gankas method. The positives go as follows. It promotes a dynamic movement instead of a robotic swing. It can help golfers use the ground, rotate and swing athletically, teaches efficient shallowing, rotation and pressure movements, all found in elite level swings. Players often gain speed, better ball compression and a powerful transition. Drills like swing between the chairs or push and turn are visually easy to follow. External shoulder rotation, ground force and tilt all help eliminate over the top moves. Gankas emphasizes matching mechanics to body type, not forcing a one-size-fits-all swing. This does give players some freedom to personalize it. And it encourages learning how the body controls the club, not the other way around. And it makes golfers more aware of sequencing and cause and effect, something I'm a huge fan of. Now some of the negatives for the GG method on the average golfer go something like this. Concepts like early trail leg extension, external rotation, and ground force timing are tough to execute without guidance. Many golfers don't have the mobility or awareness to do this well, leading to poor results. The method is highly technical and average golfers can easily fall into a mechanical, over-analytical trap, trying to copy movements without understanding the why. It requires a lot of reps, often with video feedback or coaching to make meaningful progress. Without regular check-ins, golfers can mess up the sequencing, especially during transition, something I see quite a lot on the range. Older or less flexible players may struggle with the aggressive hip turn and rotation demands. They may need to modify the swing significantly, which most won't know how to do on their own. And the rounded lumbar setup GG used to teach more heavily can lead to posture issues, especially for players players with back problems or poor mobility. And as a bonus caution, we have an Instagram versus reality issue. Many people see Gankas' methods on Instagram or YouTube and think it's about style over substance, but they're often copying the look without the function. The external appearance of his swing doesn't always match the actual forces at play, a major source of confusion, which now leads me into taking a look at George Gankas' golf swing himself and one of his instructors, and then we're going to finish off the video by looking at 6 players of the past and show you that they actually had some of George Gankas' move, which begs the question, is this just another rebranded method, or is this actually a brand new method that he has coined and designed for himself? Or is it always just about self-guided discovery, discovering the same thing over and over again? Let me know in the comments down below. So I want you to hear what George Gankas describes in this iron swing.
Okay, so you heard them all pop in transition. Everybody's gonna do it different. Okay, so he hooked that, okay? When he hooked it, why did he hook it? Why'd you hook that, Johnny? You got it so shallow, right? And you got it under at the bottom. So let's do it again. So when you do that and you try and do it all at the bottom or all in transition, you better stay on top of it. You better not be at all tilted back. Much different, right?
So one of the things that GG expresses is the need to try and get that club as vertical to the spine as you can fairly soon in the golf swing. We have him here with a driver, and we also have him with an iron too. So I wanted you to watch that iron swing of what he's trying to teach, and that student does it pretty well. And we're going to look at that professional he was working with and see those 2 swings back to back, because he changed something, but we're going to find out what it was. But let's take a look at George first, and let's see, does he actually do what he is trying to teach others to do? And we start by looking at this pretty exaggerated upward motion. It's almost like somebody gave him a drill to use, and I've used this drill many times over the course of my career to teach how the golf club is connected to your body. And we used to do this a lot. We used to lift the club up and then basically turn. So it's almost like he did this in development and started swinging really good and hit like this, and that's probably where this whole swing theory developed. And again, it's trial and error, and it's probably been done before. But let's break this down, and we'll also break down his iron swing. So yellow up there, and what Mellow Yellow is going to represent is the lower plane line and also the upper plane line. Now keep in mind, these do not necessarily have to be hit, but it helps with cause and effect to see how the whole body's working. Next, we're going to have Gumby Green as the back brace line to see any motion forward or back. And then lastly, we are going to have our Barney Purple going right through the spine just to see if that club does get perpendicular to the spine when it occurs. Now keep in mind, I had to really look at his golf channel, and I can find very few swings of him swinging, and I could only find these ones that were some time ago of him doing on-course instruction, so it is a rare thing to find. Saying that, the quality of the video isn't quite up to par with what we're used to seeing, but we can kind of get an idea. So basically what you're looking at in this position is we're going to draw another Barney Purple, and this is the feeling that I believe he's trying to establish, but in a circular motion. So he's trying to keep the club shaft relative to his spine angle and just pivot around that and use his hands to go up and down accordingly, is the crux of the swing. Now this is not a new concept. Many players have done this in the past, and I see a lot more doing it on the tour, because what it does is allow the body to drive the golf swing more and rely less on the hands and arms, which is basically what he's trying to accomplish. He's trying to get the club in a position where the body will square the club more so than the old traditional motion of the hands doing more of the work. But unfortunately, that's what most amateurs need to do, because they don't have the body ability like some of the best in the world. But we take a look at the top of the swing, and we can see he does get higher than his secondary plane line, and we'll draw this now in Ivan Red, and we also see a exaggerated crossing the line. Now again, this is powered by that right elbow. So if we back this up, we can see the right elbow. If we were to extend that right elbow, I believe he's trying to get it to match up to that right elbow, because if you take a look, Ivan Red with the right elbow, spine angle Barney Purple, and the club shaft of where he was in the backswing, they all match up together. So he's getting there. It's just a unique way of getting there. Now many players get there already, but they do it in their own style. And I think through time he is seeing this, and he's open opening up his philosophy to allow the player to get there at certain times in the golf swing. Now, there was some camera shift, but we do see that the spine angle has come up slightly and he's moved into the golf ball slightly, but it could also be the camera angle shifting, but I do think that there is a slight standing up at this point of the swing. And now what George does really well is we take a look at his triangle check and we can see where those hands should be going. They're almost going backwards to make sure he reconnects with his body, and as we see those hands, they do go down that initial triangle check, so he's able to sequence this correctly, and then they cross over to our view right of that triangle check because it's starting to connect to the body. But as we continue on, and the right elbow now connects to the body, Hogan-esque style, we do see that club still on a slightly steeper angle than perpendicular to that spine. It is very hard to get perpendicular to the spine. The more upright you stand at impact, the harder it becomes. It would be much easier if his spine angle was tilted more down, then his perpendicular would be a little bit steeper. But so this is a common misconception I can see happening to a student that does have early extension. There's no way to stay perpendicular to that early extension because then you will top the ball and your hands will have to get involved, and this is where the shanks lead in and the really heavy shots because your hands get too involved. So as we see, we go from that one frame, and the next frame we see him strike the golf ball, so that club did travel slightly steeper than what he is trying to do, and we do see a fairly significant loss of the spine angle and definitely moving into the golf ball. Now, this could also be a camera illusion. If you get further away from the camera, meaning that you have a lot of lateral slide, you start to create the gap between that green line and our view, so it could be slightly illusion, but there is definitely moving up in the golf ball, or it could just be a bit of both. But as we see that exit path, we see the hands do exit slightly higher, but that club is now perpendicular to his spine angle, which means that there is a little bit of hand manipulation at impact, past impact. And as we come up, we see that the club definitely is perpendicular to that spine angle. So yes, he is hitting some positions in his philosophy, but also no, he is not quite hitting some positions. But this is a unique swing, and the one issue I do have is when somebody is trying to create a method around their own swing. Now all of a sudden that feel versus real gets lost in translation, and if this swing provides so much advantage over every other swing, why do we not see the best in the planet doing this type of motion? Because they don't. They all vary in their body rotations, their limitations, how they grew up hitting golf balls, what clubs they use emphasizes the way their body develops and their swing develops. And we see this a lot with these type of instructors where they try and teach their swing to others. This type of philosophy that I hear more often than not, they all claim that this is the better move. This is the one that will get everybody better yardages. But if that's true, look at the PGA Tour for the past 60 years. There is no one swing that is all the same. Trust me, if they could find a way to get a better position, they would all be swinging the exact same way, but they just don't. So let's take a look at his iron swing. So here we have an iron swing, and it looks fairly traditional to me. I don't see a lot of what he was trying to work on with his students, and I believe that's one of his professionals that teaches on staff with him. But let's break this down because this looks pretty normal to me. So we're going to do this in Ivan Red, the lower plane, upper plane line. We're going to do all Ivan Reds just for the sake of me not having to switch around so much, so we get the basic understanding of his starting positions. We take a look at the arches of the heel straight to the sky, so it's a nice athletic posture. We definitely see the weighting is centered, so this will help any athlete in athletic motions. Number one is be centered. Now, it's easy to stay centered when you start centered. Now we take a look, do the hands go below the face? Now that's one of the first things that he's looking for, and I actually see the hands going slightly above the face. It is nicely connected. The hands do go inside, which is what he is looking for, but I would have expected the club to be up in this region to allow him to set the hands where you'd like other people to do so. We get to that secondary plane line. It's a little bit lower, that secondary plane line. We don't see as much flying elbow. We see the club in a slightly laid off position, but I actually prefer that position for irons because it's easier to drop in the slot. Now here's the magic move. Let's see if this really occurs, and let's see if this gets shallower or not. So right now we see it falling in between those two planes, and we see it dipping slightly lower there. And we have one more frame here, and it does get on that lower plane line. So I would say this isn't necessarily a shallowing. I think it's just a normal motion. And as we get down into impact, we see the whole body does turn together. So yeah, I would say that part of his swing philosophy is there. But I tell you what, most tour players do that to start with. They are more body dominant players. We're seeing the hand dominant players at that tour level start to disappear just because it doesn't provide as much consistency. As we strike the golf club, we see the whole chest is facing the target. We see a normal tilting relationship. So we're going to look at the tilt just past impact. We see it is at 54. We get to the top of the swing and we take a look at it. What it is now, it is 38. So we're looking at 16 degrees of shoulder tilt, which falls right into tour average of 15 to 25. So I don't see anything that's exaggerated. We see the exit path. The hands get to the secondary plane line pretty well. As we come on up, we do see here's a good position to look at. And this is what I want everybody to watch. Look at the shaft angle and look at the spine angle. They're basically the same. So this is that rotation and just basically driving with the tilting and the turning, which again is not uncommon at the elite levels. So would I say this is anything new? Not necessarily. At this point, I see evidence of slight motions, but it's not necessarily what he is trying to teach his instructor. So having said that, let's pull up that instructor now, and let's pull up the one where he hooked it on the left side and where he hit it good on the right side and see the differences. So let's draw the plane lines at the top of the swing to take a look at where that club shaft is pointing. Now the one on the right side is the one where he hit it good. The one on the left side is the one where he hooked it. Now what George is looking for, from my understanding, is during that transition point, he wants that club shaft to be above the golf ball. And now this should, in theory, be perpendicular to the spine. So let's draw this in Ivan red and let's see where that spine angle is, and we can see both of these are doing a good job of staying perpendicular to the spine. So that's step number one, get it perpendicular. Now we drop in and we just connect to the body, rotate, turn and tilt using your footwork correctly. Footwork and groundwork will really succeed the swing or make it fail, because that adjusts your tilting if it's done incorrectly. As we come on down, let's take a look at a couple frames. The one that was hit good is actually leveling out, and the one that was hit bad is staying too shallow. So here is impact, and we can see that the spine is about the same, and we take a look at the tilting is the same. The body angles are pretty much the same. So if we take a look at the angles here, we're going to draw that left edge line and see that is at 141. This right edge line is going to be at 141. So this guy has got a really consistent body motion and turn. So yes, this could have come down to the laying off at some point, but I have a feeling it had to do with the hands releasing, because we saw that same position at the top where the club was pointing above the golf ball. Once we see this release, we can start to look at, there's the exit pass. So let's back this out. So yes, it is definitely the hands taking over, because we can see and look at the exit path here versus this exit path is closer to that spine angle. So I believe this can only really work if you delete the hands manipulation and keep them up so that club shaft is perpendicular to the spine angle longer through impact. Anytime you have fast hands, it's gonna be a recipe for a rope hook at this point. So somebody like me that has very fast hands and has an issue, I would never be able to swing like this because I just get in my own way. So knowing your limitations, I believe, is step number one. If you're self-taught, if you have lack of body mobility, this is probably not gonna work for you. But if you have the ability to turn and tilt like Gumby, this actually might work for you. But just be cautionary when you take this on, because it can lead to a different path of you not wanting to be in. So we're gonna now look at the 6 professionals I've chosen that does emulate some of GG's approach. Now Rory McIlroy here, the similarities to what he has used in his golf swing that compares to what GG teaches in his library is the pelvis opens massively at impact. Not only that, but he uses the ground to jump up and rotate in the downswing, which is textbook Gankas. So you will see this move. Watch from the top of the swing. Look how Rory will just sit. Now he's sitting down to then jump back up. So as he strikes down at impact, we can see that right leg extend. He's pushing up. Even the left toe is starting to hold the ground while his heels go up. So he's using that up and down, which can develop a lot of power. So Rory's athleticism and sequencing is what Gankas tries to simulate through the drills, but Rory, I believe, developed it intuitively on his own. So next up, we have Sergio Garcia. Now, obviously, you know what I'm going to talk about here is the way he gets that club very flat, or as I like to not like to hear, shallow. Now what helps Sergio do this is his trail arm will work down and in, just like the GG drop, and what that does, it pulls his circle closer to him, and while dropping it will also shallow the club a lot. So we see from the top of the swing, we're going to draw this in Ivan red. It is definitely above that ball again. And as we come on down in, watch the club just drop straight down, and we see it go right over that right forearm. So he's still able to maintain a pretty good position here relative to his spine angle. And you can see that is pretty perpendicular to the spine. This is a very hard move and not that easy to replicate. So again, Sergio is a real life example of GG style shallowing, but done naturally and under pressure at the highest level. So that is the key, pressure at the highest level. So next we've got Greg Norman. This is the 80s and 90s. We're taking it back 30-40 years already, which time flies, unfortunately. So this is the deep hands and rotational finish we're looking at. So how we can tell this is, watch that right elbow, watch the right elbow pull into his body here, and at this position we can see that that club is now pulling back behind, and it's definitely much deeper than we've seen other people where they keep that right elbow straightened out longer. Now in order to do that, that does change your shoulder tilt relationship, so it does favor somebody that stands up a little taller, because if you're bent over, in order to maintain that tilting, you have to keep your tilt relative to your setup, and that will now keep your arms more out in front of you, which will become very hard to shallow. You don't need an introduction for this guy, Jack. So Jack stood very tall at setup, something Gankas has come around to allowing more recently, especially for taller players. And Jack also has a massive shoulder turn and lets his hip rotate freely. Again, a key part of modern Gankas pivot. So here we have an upright setup paired with an aggressive rotation, which usually do go hand in hand, and Jack's swing had many modern elements but wasn't branded with biomechanics. It was athleticism and sequencing, same as what Gankas encourages. And now we're taking it back to the 40s through the 60s with slamming Sam and Snead, and we did something on Sam last week, but it's good to see him back on the channel. And some similarities as Snead used his trail leg to push and post early, just like the early extension Gankas encourages to create rotation. He uses incredible ground forces, seen as how he would sit in his transition and explode upward through impact, another major GG principle. So Gankas sells the use of this ground and push off, but Snead was already doing it just without pressure plates and that jargon. And of course, we had to include Mr. Hogan, the Hawk himself. Ice in the veins, and this has to do again with shallowing the shaft and rotational sequencing. So Hogan was obsessed with shallowing the club via external rotation of the trail arm, a cornerstone of Gankas' method. His torso-pelvic sequencing into impact mirrors Gankas' teaching on clearing the hips early and rotating aggressively. So while Hogan did it through trial, error, and feel, Gankas' teaching did it through modern biomechanics and drills. Same move, different language. So the Gankas method offers a modern, athletic approach to the golf swing that can help players generate more speed, rotation, and ground forces when executed correctly. But for the average golfer, its complexity and physical demands can often lead to overthinking, poor sequencing, or even physical strain. While some of his concepts are biomechanically sound and found in elite swings, they're not always user-friendly without guidance. In the end, much of what Gankas teaches isn't new, it's just repackaged with modern language and a stronger brand. So let me know what you think in the comments down below, and let me know who you'd like me to analyze next. But other than that, I appreciate the support. I'll see you next time. Fairways and greens.